for being here tonight. So I live in central Wyoming. I visit Yellowstone annually, several times. Winter time is actually one of my favorite times to visit Yellowstone, even though it's mostly shut down because it's mostly shut down. So I'm going to share some of the knowledge that I've accumulated over the years birding in Yellowstone. And Yellowstone, as far as wildlife watching goes, it's known for a lot more than its birds. So I'm going to cover some non-bird stuff as well. So bear with me if you're only here for the birds. We're going to talk megafauna because you can't talk Yellowstone without talking all the big things with fur and teeth as well, because so many people go to Yellowstone in search of some of those amazing creatures. So definitely we're going to talk birds. You're going to see birds, but we're also going to talk non-birds. Okay, so with that, let me. So I'm an ornithologist for the National Audubon Society. Specifically, I'm our community science coordinator for Audubon Rockies, which is the regional office of the National Audubon Society for Colorado, Wyoming, Utah. I met Deborah at our Audubon conference this year in Montreal. That's where she invited me to come speak. And I thought, oh, well, what topic could I have that would be of interest for you all? And I thought, well, sometimes having someone with some local knowledge of a particular, site of interest is exciting, for those maybe who would like to plan a trip there. Maybe this would stir someone to plan a trip to Yellowstone. Somewhere along those lines, I was hoping that we could find that excitement. So that's why I picked Yellowstone to share. And it's also just something I have, some depth of knowledge on. So not only is this my job, but it is my passion. Like many of you, I'm a bird lover. I'm a bird watcher. It's my hobby. So when I'm not working, I'm still doing bird stuff. Very much enjoy doing it in all parts of my time. And then you're going to see the photos tonight. The photos are from some of the stuff I do on the side in my non-Audubon hours. So all my photos that are shared tonight are through my private endeavor, which is Flocking Around, as well as the e-guide I wrote for Yellowstone, which I'll mention more at the end about. So if you see that in the lower corner of some of the photos, that's why it's theirs. They're my photos, but that is my side endeavor. So that's a little bit about me. As Deborah said, central Wyoming, it is 30-ish degrees today. It was up to in the 40s, but now we're cooling down now that the sun's behind the mountain. And it snowed a couple days ago, and that is our second snow of the season. And believe it or not, that is actually really late for our second snow in the season. So it's been an extended summer here in Wyoming, though maybe for many of you that would be nothing close to your summer. Just in case we ever have new people who, are kind of dipping their toe in the hobby, I always like to just, help us to think about, why are we doing this? Why are we talking about this? Why are we all here? And it's not an easy thing to answer to people. Well, why do we care about birds? Why do you watch birds as a hobby? What joy do you find in it? Because, for everyone, really, it's a very personal reason, right? You can try to paint a broad picture of why we watch birds, but for each person, there might be a very specific reason why they watch birds. But some of the definitions or descriptions of the why out there, are including, just some people watch birds because they want to contribute back to bird conservation. And a planet with healthy habitats for birds is going to be a planet that's healthy for humans as well. And then, there are some that just find that the mental joy of it, that, it benefits their mental health. There are multiple studies and more coming out about the benefits to humans of just being outside in a habitat with a diversity of birds, and the positive chemical change that can cause in humans. So there's that aspect. And then some people, they just like to go out and look at birds because they want to feel that connection to nature. So Why do we watch birds? Well, you know your own reason. I can't tell you, but I can tell you for me, it's a thing of joy. Sometimes I like the semi-competitive aspect of bird watching, and going out and trying to identify a difficult bird, challenging myself with, new identifications. I like that part of it sometimes as well, but I really just like to be outside and disconnect from a lot of the over connection we have, especially as we continue to grow in technology and society. We're almost over connected, and sometimes I like to be underconnected. um, as we go through tonight, also, just as I mentioned with the photos, most of these photos are going to come from the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. I did take them somewhere in what we call the GYE, the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, so not necessarily in the park, but in the lands and habitats surrounding the park, because while Yellowstone's amazing, the surrounding lands are equally full of amazing wildlife. So as we go through, you will see some of those. There's, I think, one exception maybe at the very end that's not from the Yellowstone ecosystem. So why visit Yellowstone? Why do people go to Yellowstone? Why is it one of the most visited national parks? Why did it stand out so much that Teddy Roosevelt said, "Hey, this right here, this is it. This is what we protect. This is what we're going to change the face of conservation landscape with this park. This is going to be the start of something magical." Well, because Yellowstone it's amazing. If you've never been, it is truly amazing. Now, it's you have to get beyond the crowds of people. I mean, when it's seeing millions of visitors a year, that means when you go and you go during the busy season, you're going to be surrounded by people. It's not going to feel like a natural experience if you stick to the touristy hotspots. But some of those touristy hotspots are worth seeing regardless of the crowds, because when you go to Old Faithful, which this is an image of, and you see that geyser go off, for some people, it's life altering, and it's just an incredible experience to see. And so, why Yellowstone? The wildlife, which we're going to talk about, but also, Yellowstone is known for its geothermal activity because of this large caldera that sits underneath it and drives all of this geothermal activity, where there's geysers, there's mud pits that bubble and roil. There's just random hot springs all over the place with amazing micro life in them, creating, dazzling colors and smells. And so why Yellowstone? Because it is just packed full of everything that is special. And again, starting with just what it's known for most to many people are the geothermal features like Old Faithful, the Grand Prismatic. But then, of course, there's the wildlife. So that was Old Faithful. This is Mammoth Hot Springs, another one of the reasons why people go to visit. And you can see, I mean, the view, for one, is fantastic. And then this just incredible picturesque, kind of cascade of these hot springs full of thermophiles and history, just all buried in this crust, created by this caldera, creating all of these unique things. So this is one of the reasons why. But then, of course, as many of you, if you want to go or have gone, can attest to, many people go because it's one of the last places in the lower 48 to still feel wild and to see some of the wildlife that would have existed, as far east as the Great Smoky Mountains, and maybe even further east before colonization of North America. So when you go to Yellowstone, you can see grizzly bears. You can see black bears, and you can see them hunting still, like they're natural prey sources. You can see them foraging. You can walk down a trail and just suddenly, oh, there's a bear coming down the trail wandering at me. There's other megafauna like the elk, the deer. People love, to go in the fall, this time of year when the elk are bugling and gathering their harems. So the bears, a big reason. Also the bison. This is, the last, one of the last wild herds of bison still in existence. And it is managed to an extent. We say wild, uh, maybe not truly. Can a large ungulate herd be wild, or at least maybe not a bovid herd, right? A bison can't maybe truly be wild any longer because of how we've changed the landscape with agriculture. But one of the last ones to exist. And so going and seeing these free ranging herds of bison where they're interacting with their predators. And one of those predators is another reason people go to visit, because it's one of the places in the lower 48 where you can still see and experience gray wolves actively on the landscape in large packs hunting. And so in this image, there's quite a few wolves in this herd of bison. And I actually got to witness, so the entire herd was on the hill. And in this image, you only see 5 or 6 bison, I think 5 bison here, which are all bulls. So these are all big males who are clearly unimpressed, not really scared. But there was a herd with a bunch of young, baby, immature bison who are much more vulnerable, and they spotted the pack coming through the hills, and they stampeded down that hill right at me. I was with my wife, and they stampeded down the hill at us, and we got to witness that special moment. And of course, when you go to Yellowstone, there's people who don't understand and fully appreciate and get impatient with everything. And so someone passed us as we were stuck in a bison rut. Several males were fighting in the road and chasing after females. And so we had slowed down so that we wouldn't accidentally, get a bison in our grill. And someone passed us. And right after they passed us, while we were sitting waiting for the traffic jam of bison to move apart, I looked up the hill and I went, oh my goodness, that pack's about to test the herd. And so we jumped out of the car and we got to witness the stampede as these wolves tested the herd to try to find a weak spot, maybe pick off one of the young ones, or maybe a sick older cow. Again, the bulls, not so much caring, but definitely the young ones were in more danger. So how many can you see here? So if try to look and see, well, how many are in this image? How many are visible in this pack? I'll give you one more second to look, and then I'm going to help highlight them here. So in this image, you've got the 4 lower ones and then the 5 upper ones. So there are 9 in this image. There were 12 that we saw in the moment. 3 had already kind of leaked back into those baby aspens at the top of the hill. And so this is very near to a den site as well. And not even an hour and a half before I took this image, we were at the den and we watched some of the older females. I believe even the alpha herself, she came in carrying a hare to the pups, and the pups were playing at the mouth of the den. So we got to see wolf pups playing with each other at the mouth of the den, and then some of the older females kind of standing guard around them, making sure they don't wander too far. And then the alpha, she came in with food to feed them. So that was all really cool. And then just a few minutes later, we saw her pack actively hunting bison, which, again, why Yellowstone? This right here. This is why. This is why you go. This is why I go multiple times a year when I can, because every single time you have the chance, the opportunity to see something special. That grizzly bear photo from a few moments before, I actually saw, and I think we'll see that photo later in the slideshow, I saw that grizzly bear jump into a pond and take a bath. And so I got to watch a grizzly bear taking a bath. And then I set up myself knowing grizzly bear behavior at least well enough to predict them some. I got the photo of it just walking in front of me by sitting and waiting until it came out of its bath, and it followed this drainage, and I knew right where it was. Probably I was so sure where it was going to cross, and sure enough, he walked out and crossed right in front of me, turned and looked at me, and kept on walking. So why Yellowstone? Because of the moments like this, and because of the amazing bird life as well. So what makes Yellowstone special is that, one, it sits on this caldera. So that is what this large pink area in the left image, that is all part of that kind of volcanic activity that has turned Yellowstone into this amazing geothermal place. But then on top of all of that volcanic activity, and on top of all this amazing history, geological history, are these incredible habitats. And so when you look at the right image, what you're seeing is it's a park that is made up mostly of lodgepole. There's some mixture of fir and spruce with the pink, the green, the main green there is our lodgepole, and then that purple is actually kind of this finger of white bark pine which comes down. And for those unaware, white bark pine, endangered species, highly impacted by human activity, and it only spreads by a couple of methods. It's a major food source for grizzly bears, but then probably the most helpful and useful spreader or planter of this tree is the Clark's nutcracker. And so they are highly intertwined, the two species, the white bark pine and its other relatives in the same genus, and the Clark's nutcracker. And there was actually a study done. This has been many years ago now. I think we're probably approaching the 10-year mark for this study, where they put an estimated value that the Clark's nutcracker, its planting of the white bark pine, if humans were to try to replicate it, to help save the species, it would cost, at the time, it was like somewhere in the neighborhood of like $1.2 billion per year to plant white bark pine at the scale that Clark's nutcrackers do it. Of course, again, that was 10 years ago. So now, who knows how much we're talking of economic value that Clark's nutcracker brings by spreading this amazing and important tree. And so, those two are tied together in such a unique way. And you can see a major part of Yellowstone in that upper part, that Lamar Valley area, especially, that white bark pine plays a major role. Okay, so let's talk birds, because I know so many of you want to hear birds, you want to talk birds, you want to look at birds, you want to think about birds. So when we think of birding in Yellowstone, when I wrote a guide to birding in Yellowstone, I was thinking, what is the best way to encourage people to go and bird in the park? And so in an older field guide for birding in Yellowstone that's out of print now, it kind of formed it together by birding by habitat. But birding by habitat can be a little difficult because some of it's spread out. So we didn't talk about some of the smaller habitat types that were kind of spread in the corners. So spreading or birding by those, it can be a little more difficult because you have to go here and then you got to go all the way down here. And so, okay, well, could you organize a guide that's looking for specific birds? Well, again, they're going to be very scattered out based on what their needs are, right? Those habitat niches that they occupy. And could you do it by season? Well, you could, except for really Yellowstone is pretty difficult to bird outside of the busiest time of year. And so really there'd only be one season that you could really recommend great birding opportunities by. Not to say you can't go birding there in winter, but I will say diversity dips significantly and it's much harder to access a lot of those special habitats. So to me, the most logical way to put together a recommendation of how to go birding in Yellowstone was to do it by route. And then along that route, highlight the other animals and organisms you can see on that route, the other highlights, including the geothermal highlights. Because when you go to Yellowstone, what you'll experience is with that many people and that many cars on the road, they're actually experimenting with some tram services, some self-driving tram services, because there's just so many cars on the road, people can't get places. It can take, if you try to do that full loop, which is not actually that great of a distance, but it can take you 6 to 8 hours to drive the full loop, depending upon traffic. And it's just because it's just so crowded. So doing it by route seemed the most logical, because then what you do is you focus on one route one day and one route another day and one route another day and work your way around the park that way. because trying to bounce back and forth, you just can't do it. You can't bounce back and forth in Yellowstone. So what are our routes? And I've got a map I'm going to show everyone with some of the highlights, the 100 plus stops that I recommend folks to visit. I'll show you the map at the very end. So Canyon to Tower Junction, the east entrance to the fishing bridge to Canyon, Gardner to Mammoth, which is that far northwest kind of entrance out of Montana, Gardner to Mammoth, which is, or I just said Gardner Mammoth, Grant to Fishing Bridge, which is kind of southeast, and then the northeast entrance to Tower Junction, which is my personal favorite stretch is northeast entrance to Tower Junction. That is where, if someone asks me, hey, I have one day to spend in Yellowstone, where should I go? That is always what I say is the northeast entrance to Tower Junction. It sees the fewest number of people, and to me has the most exciting amount of megafauna diversity, especially, and great bird diversity as well. Many of you may recognize this little individual here. In the previous photo, that was our western swallow, the violet green swallow, and then this is our pink-sided junco, which is our breeding junco in Yellowstone. So this one is in Yellowstone in the summer breeding, the pink-sided junco. Although Wyoming, we have 3 or 4 different subspecies groups of juncos that breed in the state. So this is the one in Yellowstone, though. So then the other routes, north to Canyon, okay, which is that's going to be kind of more of the busy part. That side of the park, north to Canyon, Madison to Grant, Mammoth to Madison. That side of the park is kind of some of the busiest side of the park. That's where, if you're going to go see the geothermal activity, that's where you're going to go. Okay. And then the south entrance to Grant, and that's kind of a lesser known one, unless you're going to visit Teton National Park, which is pretty much connected to Yellowstone. The two sit right together. And then Tower to Mammoth, also a great stretch. And then West Yellowstone to Madison, which is the far west end of the park. Okay, so how many target stops? Like I said, in the guide, we've got over 100 places to visit in the park, where you can really maximize, especially if you're coming from the east and you want those western birds, great opportunity to do it. I'll give you my top 5 favorite spots as we're going through, and then we'll talk about seasonality, thoughts in general, sharing some tips about visiting Yellowstone, and of course some of the target birds that many folks come to see in Yellowstone. Okay, so let's start. So one of my favorite spots, this is going to be going over the pass from Canyon to Tower. And so as you go to Canyon Tower, you're going to go over one of the most elevated passes in the park. And why this is one of my favorites is because it is easy access to go to subalpine and alpine habitat, which means those higher areas in the mountains where when you get up into that alpine, the trees are gone, right? You are just in open mountain air, out and away from the trees. And so when you get that high, then you start to get into some of the alpine species, such as the black rosy finch. So if you want to see black rosy finch when visiting Yellowstone, one of the easiest ways to do it is Dunraven Pass and then taking the Mount Washburn Trail, because again, you're going to get high enough where you can see them. Of course, be prepared to be short of breath because you're going to be really, really high at that point. And you're also going to then see some other cool subalpine and alpine species. White-crowned sparrows nest all over the place up there. American pipit, pine grosbeaks in some of the shrubby subalpine habitat, all over the place up there. So just a great opportunity to see some of those. And, I'm sure some of those are birds you can see where you're at in wintertime, many wintering species, but seeing them on their breeding grounds in full breeding plumage for some of these species, pretty exciting and impressive. All right, so where to next? Another one of my favorites, and this is because you can stop at Mammoth and see those amazing terraces of the geothermal activity that I showed the photo of earlier. but also the beaver ponds. The Beaver Ponds Trail in that whole Mammoth area has some pretty unique habitat because, again, of the terracing water. And then that water stays open year round. So going there in wintertime, it's a hot spot for birds because they can access water that is otherwise frozen in many other places. And while pileated woodpecker may not be exciting to you all, in the Intermountain West, those of us in the Rockies, we don't have a lot of pileated woodpecker. So it's one of the only places in the state of Wyoming to see one, which is why I highlight it. Not a highlight for you maybe, but highlight for me. But Western specialties such as Hammond's flycatcher, which is pictured here, one of the Impedinax flycatchers, that some folks really struggle with. But the Hammond's flycatcher makes itself well known and is very obvious when found because it sits the very tip top of conifers, usually along a riparian corridor, and they sing their hearts out with their very abbreviated and song that many wouldn't describe as a song. Great part about the Beaver Ponds of Mammoth is it's an area that is kept open year round. Mammoth is a community. They have a post office, they have a judge, they have a police force, and so it's in the park, but it's open year round, and so you can access it year round, which is why all seasons listed. Because hey, if you can go and you can get there, then from Mammoth you can get snow coaches to see a lot of the other parts of the park in wintertime that will be less busy. You want to see Old Faithful in a cool time of the year? Go during the wintertime when there's no crowds because you have to snow coach to Old Faithful. That's a great time. Okay. Another great spot. So the Yellowstone Lake Drive, Yellowstone Lake is massive, very, very large. So the kind of east to or west to northern part of that drive, there's some points, there's several points along that drive. And so it's a great place to see some western water birds. And, I'm not sure how many of these you get to see where you're at, but Barrow's goldeneye is not even really a challenge in Yellowstone. You want to see Barrow's goldeneye, Yellowstone, they're almost a dime a dozen. Best time of year, summer and fall, because then we're also getting migrating waterfowl, so you might see some other cool waterfowl. Clark's grebe, western grebe, redneck grebe, and then we get both eared and horned grebe through there pretty regularly as well. So lots of cool water birds. Again, western specialties that you can see there, but you'll need a scope. If you're gonna do that section of that route, bring a scope because it's a big amount of water, right? Now, where you all at? You have even bigger water, obviously, so you probably all know, yep, you got to have a scope if you're going to look at water birds. But for us here in the West, where water's pretty unusual, Yellowstone's really big. Yellowstone Lake's a really, really big amount of water for us. Okay, now this is one of my favorites. I go to Slough Creek Trail every time I go to Yellowstone if I have time. If it's not just a quick drive through, I'll go to Slough Creek Trail, which is in Lamar Valley. Lamar Valley is my favorite route, and which is that northeast entrance to Tower Junction. And so Lamar Valley to me is the peak place in Yellowstone because it's the fewest amount of people and the greatest amount of birds and other wildlife. And its road is kept roughly open in wintertime. It can be hit and miss depending upon how bad the snows and weather are. So be prepared that it's maybe not open in wintertime for a day or two, maybe a couple of days. But for the most part, they keep that road open all the way to the community of Red Lodge. So you can access it from Mammoth. You have to come in from the Mammoth entrance, which is Gardner to Mammoth. So you go to the town of Gardner and then into the park and then down to Mammoth and toward Tower Junction. And from there, it's a rough road. So if you've never driven on ice and snow, get some snow chains, be prepared to go slow because it might be a snow-packed road the whole way, and that might be the extent of the plowing. But in the summertime, Slough Creek Trail packed full of wolves in the area, bears in the area, and birds in the area. Some of the greatest spots in that area where you can find sapsuckers. So again, if you're coming from the east and you're looking for Williamson sapsucker and red nape sapsucker, great opportunities along Slough Creek Trail. I don't know if I've ever gone to Slough Creek Trail and not seen a Williamson sapsucker. Maybe only a female, but only a female, still an impressive bird that is just stunning. I love Williamson sapsuckers. They're some of my favorite birds. And I find the females just as impressive as the males, even though, at one point in time, early naturalists thought it was two separate species because of the sexual dimorphism is extreme in this sapsucker versus some of our other woodpeckers, which don't show a lot of it. So really exciting to go there and see those. Again, because there's a lot of bears in the area, you're going to want to be very prepared, okay? And we'll talk more about how to be somewhat bear prepared when you visit Yellowstone, okay? Also a great area in the willows and some of the shrubby areas there along the water. Easy spots for finding calliope hummingbird. And then sandhill cranes, anywhere there's water in Yellowstone, any sort of wetland habitat, any sort of open field type habitat, look for sandhill cranes. They're nesting. I know you all have resident sandhill cranes where you're at, but this is a different subspecies, and they're pretty large and impressive. I mean, to raise a ground rearing chick in an ecosystem where you're surrounded by bears, wolves, foxes, coyotes, and could be trampled at any point by a bison stampede, you have to be a pretty impressive crane to do that. So worth stopping to see the cranes around here. Now at the beginning, we were talking about this amazing waterfowl, the harlequin duck. And so Lahardy Rapids, which is, it's a great stop. It's a pretty short stop. There's not a lot else to do along that direct area. But the rapids are amazing because it's one of the easiest places to see and photograph harlequin ducks. You need to get there before mid-June if you want to see the males, because once the waters get too high from the snowmelt, the males will disperse. They've breeded with the females, so the females will take off to go nest, and the males leave the area. So if you're going to come to see the harlequins at Lahardy Rapid, you got to be there before mid-June. Just personal recommendation. If you don't beat those, you still might see harlequins, but it might only be females or immature birds. It can be really hit and miss after that point, okay? So if you can, go before then. You'll also beat most of the crowds if you get there before mid-June. Most folks are showing up, midsummer especially is when it's at its peak. And because it's rapids, you can also see the American Dipper. In fact, many places in the park, you can see the American Dipper. In wintertime, just find one of the open patches on the river, any of the rivers, and there'll be an American Dipper. American Dippers are rampant throughout the park, which is great because they're an adorable species, super impressive, super hardy, a bird that, that's that big and can survive, some of the most dangerous water in the coldest of temperatures, in an unforgiving environment. And they're just out there living their best lives, dipping along the way and, eating macroinvertebrates and small fish. It's really exciting to see. And so dippers, synonymous with Lahardy Rapids. So even if you go to Lahardy Rapids and you don't see the harlequin duck, stick around long enough and a dipper will show up. Almost guarantee. If you go to Lahardy Rapids and don't see a dipper, there's something else going on. Maybe you need to go to the eye doctor. I don't know. But American Dipper, Lahardy Rapids, they go together like peanut butter and jelly. Everyone always wants to know, whenever I get people asking, where do I go to see great gray owls? Yellowstone's not the easiest place to see great gray owls. We want to actually go a little further south. Teton National Park may be easier to see great gray owls. Not that you can't see them in Yellowstone, just can be a little tougher. But Lahardy Rapids is a place where you might see them. They like the interface of wetlands and coniferous forest. They'll hunt those areas at dawn and dusk. And so Lahardy Rapids is one of those areas where you might have an elevated chance to see them. Okay. Okay, so let's say you're just passing through the area. Maybe you're doing a tour of the West and you're short on time and you want to avoid the people and you want to just, Zach, I want to maximize my time in Yellowstone with what little time I have. I want to maximize. I want to see everything. I want to see everything I can. So if that is your request, this is what I recommend. Okay. If you're just wanting to do like a quick once through, if you're going to like just cut across Yellowstone, then go up to the northeast entrance, cut across Lamar Valley, head to Mammoth, And then for mammoth, either go up through Gardner and out of Yellowstone and go through Paradise Valley, which is truly one of the most magical places just north of Yellowstone into Montana. Or then you cut south and head down through West Yellowstone and out of the park that way. However, you're going to really get into the crowds the minute you cut from Mammoth south. Things are going to get a lot busier. So if you're wanting like, well, give me just a one in, one out, minimizing my crowds, the best chance to see wildlife. So come in the northeast entrance. Okay, so you're going to come in the northeast entrance, and I'll show you this on the map here at the end. You're going to head over. Make sure to visit Mammoth, just because if you want to see some geothermal activity, it's pretty impressive there. Tower Junction, head back to Tower Junction, south, and then head to Fishing Bridge, turn at Fishing Bridge, and head out the east entrance. I've just given you the loop where the majority of the wildlife can be seen pretty easily, especially if you're there to see bears and wolves. Lamar Valley is your best chance. So heading through Lamar Valley is going to be your best bet. Love it there. So this is my really short time loop, and I'll trace this out on the map so you can kind of see it. But also a great chance for some pretty impressive birds throughout that area. Like some of my highlights that I hit on, my favorite hotspots, many of those were on this particular route because, again, you're minimizing your crowd time and maximizing your wildlife time. Really, to enjoy Yellowstone, you have to get away from the crowds, which means you have to get out of the car and you have to go for a little bit of a walk. Not too far. Most people don't leave the road, so you don't have to go terribly far, but getting away from the roads, you see fewer and fewer people the further you get. Okay, so if you want to see the big stuff, like I already said with the bears and wolves, but the bison, the elk, Lamar to Mammoth, best place to see bighorn sheep, elk, bison, grizzly bears, black bears, gray wolves. Pretty much that stretch is hands down one of the best spots. Most people just drive through it because it looks empty. But oh goodness, is it not empty? Because the bison hang out there, a lot of their major predators also hang out there. And as we saw in the habitat map, one of the reasons I showed the habitat map and the geological map, because the geology helps to determine then the habitat, right? Because the geology is determining the soil types, which then determines what types of plants can grow there. That finger of white bark pine, which is so central to so many species survival, well, that runs through that Lamar Valley strip there. And so that's why you can see so many more grizzlies in that area, because that's much closer to the area where they're going to find nutrient-rich food. Where else then? Hayden Valley, which comes south off Lamar, which is kind of the stretch from Tower then down to Fishing Bridge. It includes Lahardy Rapids. That Hayden Valley stretch, amazing again for more of the big animals, seeing the grizzly bears. I saw a black bear swimming across the river there once, and then got out and dried itself off and gave itself a scratch on the tree. All the good stuff. But watching it jump into the river was just a hoot to see. So those two areas, Lamar Valley and Hayden Valley, that's where you want to go for the wildlife. The other side of the park is for the geothermal activity. So that's the west side is geothermal, east side is wildlife, what I'm recommending to people. So if you're going to go to Yellowstone, some considerations. Here's that grizzly bear taking a bath. And as I said, you have to be very safe, right? You got to be bear aware is what they call it. Be bear aware when you're in Yellowstone. If you're going to leave your car, even just 50 yards off the road, you will want to carry bear spray. Now, most likely you'll be fine. There are not that many negative interactions between humans and bears, and it's usually outdoorsmen who are going further off the beaten path, and they're fishing, looking for game, things like that, or someone in a berry patch. But you can rent them for fairly cheap or buy them in the park. And renting one is great because then you can return it when you're done. Don't have to figure out what you're going to do with it. But that bear spray is just a great security in case you do stumble across a bear in the wrong spot, because some of them do hang out where people hang out. So, better to be safe and just carry that bear spray. Other things to consider. Yellowstone is high in the Rockies, and it gets cold there quickly. And at the snap of a finger,
it will get cold, just randomly. Someone was saying they were there in May and it was snowing. And yes, the joke, and it's not a joke, it's a fact. Every day in Wyoming, it's snowing somewhere pretty much. Of course, we have a lot of high peaks, which are seeing snow most of the year, but that it's true. For most of the year in Wyoming, someone somewhere is getting snow, and Yellowstone, because it's such high elevation, sees a lot of snow. Even in months of the year you wouldn't expect that there would be snowfall in Wyoming. Another big thing tied to both just our low relative humidity and also our elevation is hydration. People get dehydrated so quickly in Yellowstone, and you just don't realize how quickly it's happening to you. So staying hydrated. There are long stretches between any sort of convenience store, gas station, anything like that. So pack water with you. Carry snacks, water with you. Make sure you're fueled up when you go into the park, because you're going to be long stretches without access to any comforts of what modern society looks like now. So you might go 2 or 3 hours without being able to get access to fresh, clean water. So pack your own, pack extra. Again, you're at higher elevation, so be prepared. You might experience elevation sickness. You might feel short breath because you're walking where there's a lot less oxygen. So be prepared for that. Think about that ahead of time. Pack some elevation sickness medicine. Going over mountain passes, motion sickness gets a lot worse for some folks. So if you're someone who gets a little bit of motion sickness, pack some medicine for that, because going over Dunraven Pass is not for the weak-hearted, especially if you get a little bit uneasy in a car in what feels like a dangerous place. But it's not actually that dangerous. It's just it can look intimidating as you're going over. As I've said many times, prepare for the crowds. Yellowstone's a popular place, so be prepared. If you're going to go to a visitor center or anything like that, you're going to experience crowds. Best times of year to not experience them before school's out or after school's back in. Then you're going to cut out the family groups, and then most people don't want to come in those bumper seasons when the weather can turn bad and ruin the holiday, the vacation for them. And so fall and late spring before summer hits, really, those bumper seasons are great. Spring, all the animals are coming awake and everyone's hungry and babies are being born. Fall, the animals are preparing to either go into some state of dormancy, so they're all in hyperphagia, feeding like crazy, or there's rutting. If you're talking ungulates, the bison are fighting and rutting, the elk are bugling and rutting. And so either time of year, there are some amazing things happening. But if you can only come in summer, a major tip that I give to everyone is go early, stay late, and skip the middle of the day. If you've ever been on safari, if you've ever been on safari in Africa or anywhere else, typically what you experience is you get up early, you go out, you come back before lunch, and then you stay until an hour before sundown. And I would recommend similar style in Yellowstone, so as you don't wear yourself out, but also you beat the crowds. Most people don't get out into the park until 10 or 11 o'clock, and then don't understand why they don't see any wildlife outside of bison. And it's because, well, the wildlife followed the schedule of go early and stay late, right? And then during the day, they're all inactive. So you want to see things, you go early, and then when everyone else is starting to leave the park and the roads are emptying out, and you only see 1 or 2 cars parked along the sides of the road, that's when something's about to happen. Because the people who are staying late on the sides of the road in Yellowstone as the sun's going down and it seems like there's not much left to see, those people are generally the wildlife photographers who have staked out somewhere where they know an animal is likely to pass through because there's some frequency. So go early, stay late, and then take a break in the middle of the day. Get used to some afternoon naps, because that's a great way to keep your energy up then for the rest of your time in Yellowstone. So some resources. I think you all probably have heard about eBird enough times. I don't need to go too much into it, but people do use eBird in Yellowstone, although I will say some people just like to use the general Yellowstone eBird hotspot for their sightings, which is not helpful because Yellowstone is massive. So
if you're going to Eber in Yellowstone, try to find those hot spots. What I will warn you is there is no service in Yellowstone, no cell service in most of the park, except for maybe near a couple of the villages that are in the park, where workers stay, where there's the in-park hotels and food. But outside of that, you will struggle to get any semblance of service in the park. So be prepared to do offline checklists in Yellowstone as well. Some other great resources. You can get it in the park. You can order it online. The Yellowstone Resources and Issues Handbook has a lot of great information just on the park, its management, its history, and also where to find wildlife in the park. A big part of Yellowstone's resources are its wildlife, and so they're mentioned there in great description. Okay, Yellowstone Trails, a hiking guide, is great for just wanting to know, okay, if I'm going to go do this hike and experience the wildlife on it, what can I expect on this? It's going to go into a little more depth of, the accessibility of some of the trails, depending upon your comfort level and your fitness. And so it's a great resource as far as that goes. If you just want to get out and away from the crowds, it's a great guide then to get you out on the trails. Excuse me. And then Birds of Yellowstone, which is out of print, if you can still find some copies out there, has some useful information. Some things have changed a little bit since that was last in print, which I think has been 30 or 40 years ago. But if you can get your hands on a copy, I won't say that it's not useful because it very much can be useful. Okay. I love this image of this olive-sided flycatcher that is just heavy enough to bend the top of this conifer over. And then I felt like it was giving me some pretty judgy looks. And as I said, that not all the photos were taken in Yellowstone, somewhere in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem or surrounding areas. This was in Teton National Park, which is just south of Yellowstone. So very much, if you're going to visit Yellowstone and you have the time, visit Teton as well. It'll be slightly less crowded, but oftentimes it's easier to find some wildlife in Teton. Okay. And then because I've mentioned it several times, I'm going to give a little shameless plug here. I do have an electronic guide called Birding in Yellowstone National Park. I'm going to put the link in the chat when I've ended the slideshow in case you want to check it out. It's just something you can download to your phone. It'll be accessible offline. It provides a georeference map to help guide you through the park because, again, there's no service. You can still get GPS in your phone to work, though. And so it will find you and it'll tell you where you are in relation to all the hotspots so that you can move around and know which hotspot you're nearest to that then coordinates with a location within the e-guide. Like I said, I'll put a link to that in the chat if anyone's interested in just looking at it and seeing what it's all about. But this is that map. And so let me, my mouse does not want to show up and I can't get it to, there we go. Well, maybe. Uh-oh. Okay, I'm going to, I can't see my mouse at all. I don't know if anyone else can see, but I cannot see it. I'm going to exit for just a moment. Nope, it doesn't even let me exit. All right, well, I'll just get out of the annotating there. Anyways, I was going to try to draw this on the map, but I can't do it. But if you can see in that top right corner that comes into the park, that is the route that I recommend people take. So coming in that northeast entrance, coming down, you see Lamar Valley is clearly marked there, as is Slough Creek Trail, kind of all part of that Lamar Valley area. That stretch is some of my favorite in the entire park. Three-toed woodpeckers abundant, golden crown kinglets singing, along with ruby crown kinglets. Hearing both of them together in the same place singing is just magical to me. And then, like I said, the sapsuckers, the willow flycatchers throughout that habitat. Great spots in there as well for Hammond's flycatcher, western flycatcher, and the wintertime dippers along that entire road. You can't drive and not experience a dipper somewhere along that Lamar River in Lamar Valley. And then what I recommend if you're just like, Zach, I have a day. So do that and either just keep doing that, going back and forth and getting out and checking out all the spots along there, or then where it goes over to Tower Junction. There's a bunch of spots right there around Tower Junction that are worth seeing. And then you head south, and then that's going to be Hayden Valley. Okay. And you're heading south towards Lahardy Rapids and Fishing Bridge. Okay. So that big stretch there, you see there's Dunraven Pass that I mentioned. That's where you go really, really high and get up into that alpine and subalpine. And then you come out of Dunraven, you hit Canyon, which is a place, refuel, get some snacks, some water. Further south, Allium Creek Trail is great. Trout Creek is a great spot for seeing black bears, as I've seen a good number around there. Some cool geothermal features like the mud volcano in that area. And then Lahardy Rapids, which is where you see the harlequins. Okay. And then down to Fishing Bridge. And then from Fishing Bridge, you turn east towards the outer, getting away from the park. And that's a great 1-day loop if that's all you have. Really try to get to Lamar early or late. Make it one of either the first or the last stop, okay? And then do that loop and head out. And so if you hit Hayden kind of towards the middle of the day, it's not as great, but Lamar is really where I recommend most folks head to. So, and I try to there we go. Okay. And so if anyone is going to visit Yellowstone, feel free to reach out. I'll also put my email in the chat. I am always willing to give advice and tips and insider knowledge on, what's been seen in Yellowstone recently and where can I go to see it. Always willing to do that. So I'm going to give that in the chat as well. As soon as I get out of my screen share, I'll share that in the chat and that e-guide resource in the chat as well. And then I think we were maybe, do we have questions that popped up, Deborah, in the chat while we were going?
I haven't seen any questions yet, but let's see. You just said thank you. But you can type in the chat. I'm also gonna let you guys mute yourself. Yeah, you can unmute yourself if you want to. But wow, that was very comprehensive.
Interesting. Yeah. Hey, Zach, did I get this wrong? Are these the Barrows Goldeneye instead of the Harlequin?
Those are Goldeneye. It looks like those are common Goldeneye, not Barrows.
Oh, okay. That was on the Yellowstone River.
And they might be Barrows with just really dark beaks. I'd like to see them in profile, but usually the Barrows, at least the females, these might be immature Barrows. The females have bright orange bills, especially when in comparison with common Goldeneye females. But if these are immature birds, which what time of year were you there?
July.
These could be immatures. Yeah, so these might just be like immature Barrows Goldeneyes. That one on the left looks like it's got a pretty prominent forehead that I'd want to see. But yeah, definitely not Harlequins, sadly.
Okay.
All right, we do have a question from Stephen. He said, with your early start and stay late philosophy, is it worth the extra cost to stay in a park lodge?
Yes. And it is a lot of extra cost, but what I will tell you is any of the surrounding communities are going to be similarly priced, maybe a little bit less, but if you're only saving $20 or $40 per day between the cost of what you can get in Yellowstone proper and the surrounding communities, you are going to lose in the fuel it takes because it's such a long drive to get into Yellowstone for most communities, except for Gardner and West Yellowstone. But the lodging there is going to be as expensive or just slightly less expensive than staying in the park. So yes, if you can afford to stay in the park, very much recommend that because that helps you get that early start. Otherwise, you're going to be getting up, an hour before you need to get to where you want to be because it just takes that long to get there. So I would recommend it, staying in the park. It also makes, at the end of the day, less of a drive to get out, and you're not going to be as tired. But hopefully you're tired from all the enjoyment very much. So I would say it's worth the extra cost, just saving on time and fuel, again, if you can afford it. But most communities in that area during the tourist season, they will get you.
All right, we have a question about archaeological digs. Have there been archaeological digs in the park?
Yes, there's been a lot. There's an entire cliffside, obsidian cliffs, where a lot of the obsidian in the West actually came out of Yellowstone.
And this is not my area of expertise, so I can only give you some pretty base information of what I've learned being in the park. But a lot of the obsidian in the West and some in the East even came from Yellowstone because there was this large cache of obsidian that was used for tools. So an amazing amount of, anthropogenic finds in the park because of its sacred and cultural importance to a lot of different tribes both that were more residential in the area and some tribes that migrated through the area a lot. So a lot of different tribes actually have some pretty significant ties into Yellowstone.
Okay, and we had another question about any changes with temperatures, like new birds arriving or hybrids.
Yeah, so um, there's constant changes in the park, especially from the geothermal side. New geysers and pits and hot springs form yearly, if not more frequently. And then borders where typical birds found broadening. So yeah, we're experiencing similar to I'm sure what you all are, in that we have new birds appearing. More southerly birds seem to be expanding their ranges northward, or eastern birds expanding westward, and so we are experiencing quite a bit of that in Yellowstone. However, it's still such high elevation that we're not seeing a lot of changes within some of the avian fauna yet. But what I will say is we have started to see an incursion of Anna's hummingbirds in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which is pretty unique. So I would say that's one of the bigger ones. Anna's are coming east and in significant enough numbers that it's starting to be of note. And then we also, this is not in Yellowstone, but it's in that greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Maybe you read about it in the news, but we had for the first time known a barred owl nest in the state of Wyoming, and it was in Grand Teton National Park. And there's some concern over that and talk over what are they going to do with these barred owls. The barred owls, while not a problem in their existence, the problems they can cause to endangered or threatened or species of greatest conservation need because of their highly territorial behavior and aggressive hunting style. So there's concern, could they impact some of our smaller forest owls that have never lived in a territory where barred owls are common, similar to what they're experiencing in the Pacific Northwest with the barred owls actually being take permits issued to take barred owls to help them or to help the spotted owls not be competed with and hunted and killed by barred owls. So we had our first nest, and I believe now we actually have 2 or 3 different barred owl nests in that greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which is pretty big news. And are they impacting our smaller forest owls like flammulated owls and northern saw-whet owls and northern pygmy owls? I don't know if we know that yet. I don't know if there's enough of them to know that, but there's concern they might, and there's concern they might even have impacts on great gray owls, which are not small by any means, but they're not known for their aggressive behavior, and so the barred owls might even outcompete them a bit.
Okay. And Alan suggested about maybe staying in Cody the first night, because evidently he's been to the Cody Museum and said it's amazing.
Yes. The museum in Cody. It's 7 museums in one, including they have a raptor rehab program near Cody, and then the museum has several rehab birds that they have on display, and they do educational shows with. It's not sensational in any way. It is purely, these are rehab birds that we use for education to engage with school groups and stuff. And they're an amazing group that do it at the Buffalo Bill Museum of the West. And so, yes, definitely recommend it because it's 7 museums in one. But make sure you stop and see the live bird exhibit that's there. It's a lot of our native raptors from the area. So they've got a turkey vulture, who's one of my favorites. She's quite the character, named Suli. And then they have a golden eagle, a bald eagle, a screech, eastern screech owl, northern saw-whet owl,
and a peregrine falcon and a red-tailed hawk. So a lot of really interesting raptors from our region.
Okay, and I don't see any more questions. Last call for questions. Wow, you did an amazing program, and I think we're all excited to try to get over to Yellowstone.
Yes, yes. So if you come that way, like I said, my email's in the chat. Don't hesitate to send me an email. I will, as with tonight, I will be overly comprehensive in giving you places to go see whatever you're seeking. And between me and eBird, I think we can make sure that you find some of the specialty birds that many people look for when they like to come to Yellowstone. Or if you just want to know, where can I go to see something cool, I can hopefully point you in the right direction.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate it. I know everyone enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I see one more question. So there is no local Audubon chapter in the Yellowstone area. And so I don't know. There are some groups that do field trips into the park, but what I will say is almost everything in that area is going to have a monetary attachment to it. I don't know of any regularly occurring free field trips into the park. Especially there are new rules about guiding in the park, and it requires a high dollar insurance and a high dollar permit now. So yeah, no Audubon chapter doing it per se, and the Audubon chapter that used to be in Cody, they dissolved quite a few years back now, and I don't know of anyone else that's doing regular programming. But if you support some of the nonprofits like Friends of Yellowstone, or it's called Yellowstone Forever now, they have some amazing programs that are more affordable. But just warning you, it's a tourist destination, and there's a cost to a lot of things, and it's usually a higher cost. So.
Okay. I'm sure it's worth it, for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Thanks again. Thanks everybody for coming.
See everyone next week.
Thank you all.
Okay, thanks so much. Bye.